Okay, good morning all. The second years especially, hope you're all safe at your homes, studying, not wasting much time, taking care of yourself. So recently we have uploaded your silver amalgam classes. So what is silver amalgam? What are the basic constituents? It is basically the silver alloy and the mercury. What are its physical properties? How do you triturate? I think few of you have even manipulated silver amalgam in your preclinical classes, if I'm not wrong. So you have an idea. Yes, I think, yes, Tejaswini, you have manipulated silver amalgam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Right. So all of you have seen the alloy and the mercury. So how you do it in the mortar and the pestle and how it sits. Then you mix. After you gain a plastic stage, you insert it into the cavity, and then once it slowly starts setting, you start the carving and finally the burnishing. Right? These are all the procedures that you do. So now this class is exclusively on mercury management because there were few controversies on silver amalgam. Mercury is one of the basic component. So in this, we'll be studying the history, the mercury, what are the sources of mercury, why are we talking so much about mercury toxicity or mercury controversies, and then how do we reduce all this. So silver amalgam has become one of the main constituent of our dentistry. So in your preclinical second year especially, you'll be doing many silver amalgam tooth preparations and filling it, class 1, class 2, class 5, class 6 sometimes. And if it is not in aesthetic areas, even in class 4, that is canine, the distal part is also sometimes indicated for silver amalgam. The main advantage is it is easy to use. So you people have used it. So now you know it's very easy to mix, easy to place. It is in a plastic stage. So you place it, condense it, and then after it's initially set, you carve it and burnish it. So it is very easy. It can be done in one sitting. You don't need a costly equipment for this. You don't need any expertise, any special training. This is a part of your BDS. You don't need another special training for this. Does not consume much time. Your instruments also are readily available. Your material is readily available. So these are all the advantages. It is one of the most used restorative, direct restorative material, time tested. It lasts almost for 20 years, minimum of 20 years. The studies have shown us that these amalgam restorations last around a lifetime sometimes for the few patients. Undoubtedly, it cannot be compared to direct filling gold, what I've covered last time. Direct filling gold is one of the best material, no doubt about it, but because of the cost effectiveness, it's very costly, gold. And you know, now it is 5,000 per gram. And this requires pure gold. And because of its high density, you require more of gold to be condensed, as we discussed last time. And the other drawback of gold is you need to be specially expertised in that. You need special equipment, special instruments, a set of a different equipment. So that expertise and the costly material all have discouraged the use of direct filling gold. So next is the silver amalgam, most commonly used. Yes, right now we have composites. So these are all the posterior restorations. Those restorations which can be placed in the posterior teeth. Why are we talking posterior teeth so specifically is because the restorations in these teeth have to bear the occlusal forces, the main brunt of your occlusion. So if you place a material, a weak material like glass ionomer or a zinc oxide eugenol, they cannot bear your occlusal forces. Glass ionomer is indicated only in pits or in slot preparation, which is not directly exposed to the occlusal forces. Okay, so direct filling gold, silver amalgam, and composites are the posterior restorations, in which we can almost exclude direct filling gold because of its cost effective, because of its economical reasons and an expertise. So remaining these two are the only materials which have been used for posterior restorations. Now, just going back, so we know that the composition of silver amalgam is 45 to 50% is mercury, no doubt about it. So mercury forms a major component of silver amalgam. Next major component is silver alloy, that is in which again silver is around 60 to 70%, then tin, then copper and zinc, which is in minute amounts. Copper is around 13 to 30%, or you can say 12 to 30%, 30. Earlier it was low copper alloys only had 6% of copper. Later the high copper alloys have been introduced, which have less corrosion, which less creep. So all this. So now you see, we'll not go into details of silver amalgam because it is already covered. Now, if you observe this, mercury is the major content. 50% of the silver amalgam is mercury. So the journey of silver amalgam has been very long, almost in 18th century, 1833. It was introduced into dentistry. Until then, it was direct filling gold, one of the best material. And yes, the dentists were very well trained in that. Very few dentists practiced direct filling gold. So initially when it was introduced, the royal silver coins. So we had, of course, the people who ruled then was kings. So these royal coins, that is those royal silver coins, were crushed and was mixed with mercury. This idea was initially said it was introduced by M. Taub, but into America, or which these persons who made it famous were called the Crocor brothers, who called it as royal mineral succeedinium, because the royal coins were used and mixed, and it formed a paste. This was mixed with mercury, and this formed a paste, and this paste was used to fill the teeth. So this was called as royal mineral succeedinium. It became so crazy, people started using it at a large scale. So by 1840s, it is believed that half of the fillings in the patient's mouth or the people's mouth was silver amalgam. Earlier, it was only direct filling gold. Later, within 7 to 8 years of its introduction, silver amalgam introduction, more than half of the teeth, or if you say the number of restorations that were filled, half of them were silver amalgam. Then raised an issue. Because it was not standardized, there was no concentration of silver coins mixed with mercury. It was just randomly done, and that paste used to set in the patient's teeth. So this caused many issues like post-operative pain, tooth fracture. Sometimes it used to expand. So you know that initial mercury expansion. So the delayed expansion, all that expansion caused tooth fracture, and that expansion, that restoration used to bulge out. So caused pain. So all these were the disadvantages of silver amalgam initially when it was not standardized. So that led to the first amalgam war. War does not mean a physical fight with guns and barrels. It was just a cold war between those dentists practicing gold, direct filling gold, and those dentists who practice silver amalgam. The dentists who practiced direct filling gold claim that this is a crime. Silver amalgam is not a material to be used and has many disadvantages. So they took a pledge. So this was called the amalgam pledge. So all the dentists took those who practiced direct filling gold, pledged that they would not be using amalgam and they would not let the others also use amalgam. But of course, by 1850, this was rescinded. Rescinded in the sense it was taken back. They took back their words. They said they'll not stop people using it. Why? Because many investigations happened, many research happened, especially Mr. Flagg and Hickok, followed by G.V. Black. All these persons put a lot of research into the silver amalgam and standardized the procedure. So in 1896, G.V. Black put forward his publication where he gave a particular formula for silver amalgam. He said, how much should be the silver alloy? What should it contain? When G.V. Black gave his formulation for silver amalgam or silver alloy, that time the copper content was only 6%. The silver, the major component, then tin, which was around 18 to 26%, then copper was around 6%, and zinc was in minute content. Mercury was around 50 to 60%. That time we did not have Eames technique. If you have studied silver amalgam, you'll understand what is Eames technique, where it is 1:1 ratio, silver alloy and mercury is 1:1 ratio. So but that time G.V. Black, when he proposed that, it was not 1:1. Mercury was a little more than the alloy, because when we do trituration, we needed a little more amount of alloy. So that was the belief then. So he put forward or standardized the silver amalgam procedure. So if at all this gets disconnected, log in again with the same ID. So it was because of these persons that silver amalgam became standardized. They said this should be the minimum amount of mercury should be used, and it should also have some tin, copper and zinc. So G.V. Black is also known as father of operative dentistry. Not only silver amalgam, this person is G.V. Black. He was the person behind the standardization of many procedures like hand instruments. He gave the classification of hand instruments. He also said the instruments should be designed in a particular way, angulated in a particular way, and each instrument should be used for a particular use. So his contributions are many to dentistry. That is why he is called the father of operative dentistry. So after his standardization, yes, amalgam was used, was better. But again in 1930s, it had to face another challenge by Mr. Stock, a physician, not a dentist. He claimed or made it infamous, saying that amalgam was, especially that mercury in amalgam, was the reason for many ailments. So again, this was claimed as the second amalgam war. So there were many controversies again, many research happened, and that was the time that ADA was established, and it gave a specification. ADA specification number 1 was given for silver alloy, and 6 was given for mercury. So they specified that a silver alloy should contain all these constituents, and number 6 was for mercury, saying mercury should be pure. What should be the purity of mercury? So 1 and 6 were formulated for silver amalgam. 1 is for alloy, 6 is for mercury. And this is how again it was made to believe that amalgam was safe. And later Stock himself repudiated his own writings. That is, he took back his own publications. He said he accepted that he was wrong. Okay, so he also provided put forward some changes which was not very much different from what the Black had proposed. And later 1960 was another major breakthrough in amalgam. That was when two persons named Innes and Idillis by two Canadian researchers, they introduced the high copper amalgam. They introduced the eutectic copper silver alloy, which increased the copper content in silver amalgam to almost 13 to 30%. Because of this high copper amalgam, the disadvantages of amalgam, which was mainly corrosion and creep, decreased to almost negligible extent. So this was another breakthrough. One breakthrough was the standardization of amalgam by Black in 1896, and again in 1960, almost a decade later, almost 80 years later, then Innes and Idillis introduced this high copper, which further improved the properties of high copper amalgam. So this was the journey, but that was not it. It had to face another insult again, or another challenge, which was called the third amalgam war. Of course, it was not to a much extent. When Dr. Hall Huggins, again, he said publicly condemned amalgam. Again, there was a turbulence in the society on use of amalgam, but that turbulence was mainly by charlatanism. That is, quacks who were not dentists or the media persons created unnecessary hype, saying mercury in this amalgam is not safe. It causes many disadvantages, or it has many, harms our body. Like how we see now corona. Then the doctors, the media, and the WhatsApp people, the unqualified persons are creating a hype and a fear among the people. Similarly, the situation was the same then. So all the quacks or the unqualified persons, media persons made a big hype. In fact, even it is believed that in 1991, there was a major television program of 60 minutes in the US. which caused a confusion among the general population. There was no confusion this time among the dentists. The research had clearly showed that it is safe. So since then, it is thought that there is a decline of amalgam in dentistry. But that decline of amalgam in dentistry, especially in American or the Western countries, was mainly because of the demand for tooth colored restorations. People felt that amalgam is black. Why not have an alternative for that? So that led to introduction of composites. So that was the reason why there was a fall of amalgam and not because of the mercury concerns. And another reason the fall was because of improved preventive measures or improved awareness among the people. There was a decrease in the incidence of caries. So all this to some extent led to the fall of amalgam. So what should you understand by reading this history is that silver amalgam. So the bottom line to remember this, that there is no scientific evidence to show that silver amalgam is a major health hazard to the patients. It had to face so many challenges throughout that. There was a time when all the silver amalgam fillings were removed, saying that it was the cause, that mercury was the cause of illness, and it was restored either with direct filling gold or a composite or with any other material. So, but now unwarranted removal of amalgam is considered unethical. So it is not proved that amalgam in the patient's mouth is the reason for some ailments in the other parts of the body. Okay. So we have studied that the area specification is 6. And this mercury is also usually called as quicksilver. You know that it is a metal, but in liquid stage. One of the peculiar, though it is called a metal, it is always in the liquid stage. Its atomic number we are not. So this is the information. There are 3 forms of mercury: the elemental form, the organic form, and the inorganic form. So naturally, we use the elemental form, which is the metallic mercury, and this is the most volatile form. This is to be remembered because we deal with this mercury which is in the liquid phase, and we are dealing with that form of mercury which is most volatile. The organic, inorganic, we do not use it in dentistry, but commonly used outside, also used in first pest as fungicide, pesticides. This is toxic, very toxic in nature, when the inorganic form. The elemental form of mercury is usually absorbed, maximum part of it, 90 to 90% is absorbed in lungs. Even the inorganic form, this salts of mercury are absorbed by lungs, whereas this organic form of mercury, the methyl mercury, the commonest form, is absorbed in the GIT. So is this mercury, because we dentists, are we at question? No. Not only we use mercury, now I've told you the organic mercury is also used in the form of pesticides and fungicides. Even otherwise, the pure air also contains minute contents of mercury. The urban air, why are we talking specifically urban air, is because the urbanization means industrialization has also led to mercury into the air, which is said to be around 0.05 micrograms. Sometimes near the industrial parks, we find very high mercury contents in the air. If you see near the mines, it is even more. It's something which we cannot even imagine when we are near to a mercury bottle, when we are using it in the clinic. So the threshold limit value is that term when we say that the highest content. So if we are working 40 hours per week, so that is around 8 hours per day, the maximum content of mercury in the air in the clinic should be around 50 micrograms. So if this gets disconnected, kindly again connect back to the same link. We shall proceed it. So the total or the threshold limit value which was put forward by OSHA, that is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, put forward saying that 50 micrograms per millimeter cube should be the maximum or the safest mercury content in the air. So you understood that it is also present in air, and if we keep our mercury bottles open for a long time, then it becomes. So we were talking about the mercury in the air, and it is not only air, it is also found in vegetables, water, many forms. It is found also in food. So it is not only dentistry that we are exposed to mercury, even otherwise we are exposed to mercury. This happens because there are few people in the society who still think, who go through this Google knowledge, they just read half of it and say mercury is dangerous, I don't want mercury in my mouth. So this attempt has been mainly, so it is also, there's a wrong term in mercury toxicity. Mercury toxicity is not at all a term to be used in dentistry. So it is only the mercury management. Because we deal with mercury in our clinic, how should we keep this bottle safe, or how should we get not exposed to the increased mercury content is our concern. So you just have to tell those people, whoever have a wrong information, that it is not just the amalgam, silver amalgam, that they're exposed to mercury. There are different forms of, even though you don't have a silver amalgam in your mouth, we have it in our food, especially if sometimes in the ocean food, that is the fishes, in the form of fertilizers, it gets inculcated in the food. It is in the air. So if you get your blood tested or the urine tested, sometimes you do find minute amounts of mercury. So when it reaches the threshold, is then you have to be precautious or beware of. So you have it naturally in the air. That is what I want to tell you, and it is not just because of your silver amalgam. So when do you call it as mercury toxicity? So you know the word toxicity means when a material is used to a higher limit. When it is consumed to a larger extent into your body, then it starts interfering with our biological tissues or the biochemical functions, or it disturbs our cell multiplication, or probably causing some cell death. Only then it is called as toxic. So the minute amounts of the mercury which is in the silver amalgam is not at all toxic. Even if you have 10 fillings in our mouth, we are no way said that it is a toxic material in the mouth. Okay, so the two types of toxicity, that is acute and chronic. Acute, as you know, it is sudden. If you just drink a bottle of mercury, or if you are living, or if you're exposed to high vapors of mercury in a short span, then it is acute mercury toxicity. Chronic mercury toxicity is, the word chronic means you have that mercury has started accumulating in the body for a long period of time, and that cumulative effect has shown some effects. So usually this cumulative effects how do you take into account is the amount of exposure, how long you have been exposed, where do you live, and overall health of the patient. So one of the major concerns of this chronic mercury exposure or chronic mercury toxicity was the Minamata incident. This Minamata was a bay, or bay in the sense an extension of a sea into the sort of a river like. Okay, this was in Japan. This incident happened in 1952 in Japan. There was an industry which was at the bay side or the shore side, and this released the methyl mercury into that river or the bay, which was usually used by those people, the Japanese, who lived very next to that bay. So this methyl mercury was taken up by the planktons, the unicellular organisms, and the few planktons, and this was eaten up by the small fishes, and these small fishes were eaten up by the large fishes, and these large fishes were eaten as food by the people who lived adjacent to it. So this formed the food chain. This is how chronic amounts, or the minute amounts of mercury started accumulating in the bodies, and this led to mercury toxicity in these people. It became a very big issue, or heartwarming, you can say. Many children were infected, or sorry, not infected, were affected by this incident. So this was a major neurological syndrome which caused ataxia, convulsions. Ataxia is the horrible gait of the people. The legs or the limbs were incompletely developed. They could not use the limbs properly. There was no good development of the brain. It was a severe neurological syndrome. So there was numbness, general weakness. All this led to an alarming sign of mercury content in the water during that time. But this is no way no way connected to our mercury content in the amalgam. This was only one alarming sign in the society, where It said mercury causes harm. So does not mean, so that led to unnecessary hypes in the society. But so later many research happened which proved that silver amalgam is no way linked to toxicity levels of mercury. So Marie Curie rightly put it as, we should not fear unnecessary things unless you understand it. So it is, so the more you understand about it, the fear is less. So let us understand in detail now, what is the role of mercury? Why should we study about mercury? Does that cause harm to the general society who has silver amalgams as restorations in their mouths? So as I told you, we have a burden of mercury otherwise in small dosages in the form of food, or when there is volcanic eruptions. Of course, in India we don't have this problem, or when there is when people have fishes as their diet, or in vegetables, fruits and grains, because methyl mercury is one of the components used in fungicides and herbicides, or when sometimes, and even as animals, so the herbivores which eat these methyl mercury rich food, and which is again ingested by the human beings, so non-vegetarians. So all these are also the form of mercury that we are ingesting. So if we have to convince our patients, it is said that this is the best example, that is said as mercury thermometer. Even if the patient has around 5 to 10 fillings in their mouth, it is when their urine was tested, it was found out that the micrograms, it was hardly 3 to 5, even less than 3 to 4 micrograms of urine per creatinine. So this was the maximum limit, even if the patient had around 10 to 15 fillings in the mouth, which is very, very negligible. First of all, they are not found. Even if found, it is negligible. So it is believed that up to, so we have seen that 50 micrograms in the air is the maximum limit. In the urine, 25 micrograms when found is very safe. There are no clinical manifestations. So it has no health effects. If at all the patient is exposed in other forms of mercury, not with mercury in the amalgam fillings, but if is exposed to fungicides or pesticides, or having some fishes which would have consumed more amount of mercury, if it is found that they have around 100 micrograms in their urine, even then there are only subtle changes. So to some amount there may be some nerve conduction problems. If it is between 100 to 500, yes, then it is a concern. If it is of concern, it is mild to moderate. So the patient may come to us with irritability, depression, or memory loss, or sometimes disturbed kidney function. If it crosses 500, then it is alarming, because it may it may cause harm to most of our organs. So like kidney inflammation and nervous system disturbances, and sometimes we also observe swollen gums. So this is the mercury thermometer, which helps us to clearly differentiate what is the harm of the mercury. So now you can see that when the patients had more than 5 to 10 or even 10 silver amalgams in their mouth, and when their urine was tested, it was found that the content of mercury in their urine level was less than 4 micrograms, which is very negligible and will not lead to any other systemic problems. So we should be concerned, we as dentists, in fact, because we work with amalgam every day, we should be a little more careful of not getting exposed to these mercury vapors. So how are we exposed? What are the sources of mercury in our dental operatory? Is of course the mercury bottle in the operatory. So later it was replaced by capsule forms, pre-capsulated amalgam forms, which should be stored, and it should not be in the closets which are near to some heat or directly exposed to sun. In fact, they should be the mercury, or these should be placed in a place where there is good ventilation. Or the amalgamators is one more exposure for us for mercury vapors. After we finish the restoration, the scrap which is left out on the table is also a form of mercury vapor or a source of mercury vapor. When we are placing amalgam and when we are removing amalgam, again, these two are the major concerns. The amalgam scrap, which is left after we mix, the amalgam waste, that is the cotton rolls, which we remove, the some form of amalgam, the scrap amalgam, which would be clinging onto the cotton, which we put it in the dustbins, is again a form of mercury vapor, which is a source for us. And sometimes amalgam that falls down on our tiles and the carpets. So all these are a concern. So all this is a concern of mercury in our clinics. So we as dentists, because we are exposed to it every day, because we place the amalgam into the patient's mouth every day, we should be a little more cautious, precautious that we don't inhale mercury vapor. In fact, the patients are safer because the mercury reacts with silver alloy and then we are placing it into the patient's mouth. But here we deal with the elemental mercury. So we should be more cautious of not getting exposed to mercury. How should we do that is, yes, by manipulating the material carefully and also handling the mercury very carefully. So you the second years, because you handle it, you should be more careful. Make sure that you're not using excess mercury. So 1:1 ratio is to be cautiously used. You have to take minimum of mercury and then mix the alloy. Don't think it is like any other cement. That should not be your intention. So make sure you have 1:1 ratio, and after you squeeze out, make so that there is not a very one. If you take 1:1, then sure, when you squeeze out, you don't get excess mercury at all. Then after you triturate and insert it and condense it, that mercury-rich alloy which is removed, amalgam which is removed, should be carefully placed in a scrap container, which should again be placed in a scrap storing bottle, which I'll be telling you. So all these sources we should be precautious in our dental clinic. So why are we so? Yeah. So the OSHA, as I said, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has given few regulations that we should follow when we are in our operatory. We should wear mouth mask, we should wear gloves. Mouth mask is to avoid unnecessary inhalation of the vapors. We should wear adequate gloves so that we do not come in touch with the direct contact with the mercury. And while trituration, it is said that some amount of mercury vapors are released, which is minimal, that is around 1 to 2 microgram. And then we are polishing. So insertion also, yes, some amount of mercury vapors can be there. While polishing and removal of old amalgam restoration is an issue, because it is believed that when we are doing it, sometimes the temperature, because we use the burrs, one metal coming in contact with the other metal, friction, there is a heat which is produced around 125 to 160 degrees. That sometimes causes melting of the gamma phase, gamma 1 phase, the silver mercury phase, and sometimes the mercury fumes are released. So we should, how do we avoid this is, there should be copious water flow. So our aeroturf should have a good water flow. Make sure even when we are polishing, it should not be done, no dry polishing should be encouraged. It should always be a wet polishing. And when we are removing old restorations, we should make sure there is good water flow. So all this will remove the mercury vapor content in our clinics. And disposal of scrap amalgam is very, very important. So that remaining amalgam, we would have mixed some amount of amalgam, which we would not use it. Probably 3/4 of it we would have used it in a class 1 restoration, and that left out amalgam should be carefully disposed not in the dustbins or in the sinks. It should be kept in a bottle. Yeah. So while removing old amalgam restorations, the best form is to use a rubber dam. For second year students, this is called a rubber dam, where only a single tooth is isolated. So if you are placing a restoration on this tooth, or if you are removing the old restoration, only this tooth will be exposed. The other teeth will all be covered by a rubber dam. So this is to avoid unnecessary swallowing or inhalation from the mouth. So if you are removing the old restoration, then other parts of the mouth need not be exposed to the old amalgam contents. So this will prevent some amount of unnecessary exposure to mercury. So apart from that, so we should work in well-ventilated spaces. We should make sure we do not have any carpets in our clinics so that it does not absorb amalgam. And as I said, how should we dispose amalgam is we should always have that scrap amalgam which we would have carved from the patient's mouth, or the left out material that should be stored in a bottle. And that bottle preferably should be filled with a old fixer solution. You know that in oral medicine we use something called as a developer and a fixer to develop our IOPs. Okay, that old fixer solution, after some days it is changed. The old developer and the fixer is again mixed. That old fixer is a rich content of silver, so it has silver ions. So from the films, after it is developed and fixed, from the films, that silver is found in the old fixer. So you should fill that bottle with the old fixer solution, and in that we should place our scrap amalgam. Why is it? Because that old fixer solution contains silver. So if at all from the scrap amalgam there is some mercury which is released, that immediately reacts with the silver in the fixer bottle, old fixer bottle, and we are safe. Okay, that is why it is, in fact, if you do not have the immediate provision of a fixer, then the least desired one is the water. Preferably it is not to be placed in water, but at least rather than placing it dry, it is better to be placed in water. The most preferred method is old fixer solution, and that also should be completely filled to the rim. If it is only half bottle, if the fixer solution is only half bottle, then the other half is again sometimes filled with the mercury vapor in the bottle. So we should make sure that bottle is completely filled with the old fixer solution. In that we should put our old scrap amalgam. So that amalgam which has mercury, if at all the mercury is released, will react with the silver in that fixer solution and form a compound, so that we are at a we are at safety. And this scrap amalgam again should be given to the regular bodies. We have some bodies which are approved by the government where they recycle it or they use it for some other purposes. We cannot keep it for long in our clinics. Neither should we dispose it in the dustbins or in the wash basins. So we ourselves are contributing mercury to environment. So you understood. First, initially I said we are getting exposed to minute contents of mercury, even though we are not using dental amalgam, even though patients do not have dental amalgam restorations, even then they're exposed to mercury content. It is because of human negligence. So if we dental officers discharge this into the dustbins or into the sinks, we are adding this mercury into the environment. So after all this left out fillings or the left out amalgam scrap, if we do not recycle, if we put it into the drain, we are adding some more poisonous material into the environment which will affect us back. So few of the best management practices that we have to remember is not to put it into dustbins, not to put it into the sinks. Okay. So all this may again affect the humankind. So we should keep it aside, make sure it is to be sent to the persons who are dealing with recycling of mercury or silver. So we should also, not only that we know these regulations, we should also train our staff who help us, the attenders or the assistants who help us in the clinic should be equally trained how to be away from this mercury vapor, how to handle the mercury bottles. Immediately they should be kept in a place where there is no heat. They should not be kept near to sunlight. So they should be kept in a well-ventilated areas. They should be capped immediately, and only required amount of mercury should be dispensed. And that mercury or amalgam which is left out after restoration should be carefully dealt with. Even those cotton swabs which are taken off from the patient's mouth should not be thrown into the dustbins directly. The amalgam scrapings should be collected separately, or we can dispose those cotton in a separate bag and mentioning it to those waste management people. So that those will be dealt separately. If it is incinerated, usually cotton is incinerated, meaning it is burnt in the open air, those infected ones. So along with that, if there are amalgam scrapings, so you are adding mercury vapor into the air. So we should not only protect ourselves, our patients, but also the other people in the society by following this best management practices. So we all should take a oath that we shall protect ourselves and the environment from these dangerous mercury vapors. Okay, dangerous does not mean that we are also at risk. Again, hope you are clear now. We are using a very less amount of mercury and it does not harm or cause any harm to the patient by having 10 or 15 amalgam restorations. Now that we have high copper amalgam, which does not undergo much corrosion, the patients are very much safe. It cannot be correlated to any other ailments to the body. That minimum mercury, which is less than 4 microgram, does not cause any harm. Rather, we are also consuming mercury in minute amounts because of other forms of food also. So another, though this is not connected to mercury management, we should just know this, what is amalgam tattoo and amalgam blue, because this amalgam tattoo is sometimes confused to some form of fear. Okay, this amalgam tattoo is because of the corrosion products which get impregnated in the soft tissue. Sometimes when we are removing the old amalgam restorations by using high-speed erotas, the small fragments get impregnated in the soft tissues, or the corrosion product, sometimes when it is in close contact for a long time, it forms a black discoloration of the mucosa. This is called as amalgam tattoo. Then amalgam blue is that black discoloration seen in the enamel. So this again corrosion products of the amalgam percolate into the dentinal tubules, reach the DEJ and are seen as a blackish discoloration. No harm. This is just a finding. Does not mean it needs to be replaced. This is called the amalgam blue. This is called the amalgam tattoo. So hope you're clear with these terminologies and you know that mercury is not of much concern when it comes to silver amalgam. I'm not saying it is not of much concern when you're exposed outside, but as far as dentistry is concerned and silver amalgam is concerned, mercury is not at all an issue. If carefully handled, we are also safe, the dentist. In fact, because we are doing such restorations daily, we should be also equally be careful and not get exposed to unnecessary mercury vapors. So we should use a high volume suction when we are removing the old restorations. We should dispose it carefully. We should periodically, if you are practicing silver amalgam regularly, then we should periodically get checked. Our air in the operatory can be checked. Okay. So the bottom line that you should remember is the small amounts of mercury vapor that are released from amalgam during restoration is of no health hazard, and that small amount of mercury does not cause any systemic illnesses to the patient. There are many papers published regarding the safety of silver amalgam, and there is no scientific paper saying that it is potentially dangerous. Even if it is published, it is only in the newspapers and unscientific data. If you see the actual regular published data, there is no way that silver amalgam has caused ailments to the body, to the humans. So there is good amount of research saying that silver amalgam is safe, and the best part of silver amalgam is it has a 100-year-old history. It is a material that had stood the test of time. So it has been used since years. It is the best material. It is a self-sealing material because the initial corrosion that happens will itself, if there is some contraction of the material, those corrosion products seal those minor leakages, and that is why it is called the self-sealing material. It is one of the most best material known. The main disadvantage is, yes, it is unaesthetic. It is black in color. That is one of the major disadvantage. Otherwise, it has been the most, humble material, which has lasted for quite some time. Composites have taken over this amalgam because it is aesthetic cement, no doubt about it, but composites will last only for 6 to 7 years, even if done in the best hands, or maximum up to 8 years, because that is the life of a composite restoration. Whereas amalgam, if done well, if all kept in mind, only 1:1 ratio taken, triturated, then condensed properly, then it will last for a lifetime or more than 20 years. So this is the life of amalgam restoration and the history of mercury. Just a minute. So hope you're clear with the role of mercury in amalgam. Any doubts? So when you come across these terminologies as mercury toxicity or mercury silver amalgam is dangerous, don't be ignorant to all those things. So you being BDS professionals, dental professionals, you should know that mercury in silver amalgam is absolutely safe, and that 2 or 5 or 6 fillings in a patient's mouth does not cause any harm to the patient. So this is what is finally I want you all to keep in the mind. There are a few terminologies. Sometimes when you just Google it, yes, mercury toxicity, mercury is hazardous, mercury causes harm, is not to be accepted when it comes to silver amalgam. Okay, hope you are clear with the concept now. Any doubts? So I'll try to post the same in your e-platform also. The video, if it is recorded, I'll do it. So you can just go through it and clear your issues. If you have any doubts, I think you have a common forum in that Moodle's, that is e-platform, Narayana platform. You can just post your doubts there. Just go through all the lectures on silver amalgam. And then finally, if you listen to this, then it will be clear. Yes, any doubts? Yes, Ashwita, Monica, Divya, Harshita Reddy, any doubts? Okay, ma'am. So if you're clear, so we'll end this here. Good day. All of you be safe. Don't go out unnecessarily. Keep studying. Your exams, whenever announced, you should be in a situation to appear. Okay. Don't get tensed unnecessarily and waste your time. Study hard. Any doubts, you can contact us. Fine, ma'am. Bye. Good day.